The floors of Sterling Tower gleamed so brightly that one could see their reflection while walking across the marble tiles. It was the kind of building that intimidated those who entered an empire of glass, steel, and ambition. At the very top of this skyscraper, occupying the penthouse floor, was one of the most powerful women in the city, Eleanor Ellie Grant, CEO of Grant Industries. Ellie was not only wealthy but respected and feared in equal measure. Colleagues admired her sharp intelligence and ability to save a sinking business with one strategic decision. Competitors whispered her name like a storm cloud looming over their balance sheets. Yet for all her brilliance, there were rumors about her being cold, detached, and inaccessible. She lived in her office more than her penthouse, and her employees sometimes joked that her coffee machine knew her better than any human being did. On an ordinary Tuesday morning, as Ellie stepped into the lobby of Sterling Tower, her presence instantly shifted the atmosphere. The security guards straightened their backs, the receptionist smiled just a little brighter, and a ripple of hushed recognition traveled across the room. Ellie moved gracefully, heels tapping against marble, her leather bag swinging from her arm. She carried herself like someone who owned every inch of this place here because, in a way, she did. She pressed the button for the elevator, her mind already racing through the morning's meetings, numbers, and contracts. The golden doors slid open with a soft chime. Inside stood a janitor she vaguely recognized, a Daniel Hayes, a mop bucket and supplies tucked neatly against the corner. He wore the company-issued blue uniform, hands slightly calloused from years of scrubbing floors that would never belong to him. But Daniel wasn't alone. Standing beside him was a boy, maybe 10 or 11, with large brown eyes and a school backpack slung over his small shoulders. He looked out of place, both nervous and curious. Ellie stepped inside, nodded curtly, and pressed the button for the top floor. The doors closed. The silence of the enclosed space was heavy, filled with the faint hum of machinery. Just as Ellie was about to pull out her phone, the boy looked up at her and whispered urgently, "Don't talk." Ellie froze. She turned her head sharply toward him, brows furrowing. She wasn't used to Anania, let alone a child, speaking to her in commands. "Excuse me?" she asked, her voice carrying that sharp edge that often made grown executives cower. The boy's eyes widened. He lifted a small finger to his lips, signaling silence, his expression pleading rather than rude. "Please, broken bar, just don't talk," he repeated softly. Daniel, embarrassed beyond words, immediately stepped forward. "I am so sorry, Mom. He didn't mean any disrespect. This is my son, Michael. I had no choice but to bring him today. His school bus broke down, and But Ellie wasn't listening to Daniel's explanation. Her gaze was fixed on Michael, whose lips trembled slightly as though he were holding back something bigger than himself. His tiny hand clutched his backpack strap like it was a lifeline. Ellie opened her mouth again, ready to assert control, but something in the boy's frightened eyes stopped her. Against all instinct, she remained quiet. The elevator ascended. Floors ticked upward. The boy's breathing slowed, his chest no longer rising and falling in panic. Finally, when the elevator dinged at the 20th floor, Michael sighed in relief. "It's okay now," he whispered. Ellie tilted her head, curiosity piercing through her usual armor. "Why on earth did you ask me not to talk?" she asked. Michael hesitated. His father's hand rested gently on his shoulder, encouraging him to speak. After a pause, Michael said, "Sometimes a broken bar when people talk in elevators, it's too much. The noise, the echoes. It makes me feel like my head is going to explode. I just can't handle it." Ellie blinked. It dawned on her slowly this wasn't rudeness. This was something else. Something delicate. Daniel spoke softly, almost apologetically. "Michael has sensory processing challenges. Some doctors say it's a form of autism, others say it's just hypersensitivity. Either way, loud or echoing spaces overwhelm him. Elevators are especially tough. For a moment, the mighty CEO had no words. Here she was, a woman who could negotiate billion-dollar contracts without flinching, suddenly disarmed by the honesty of a janitor's son. The elevator stopped again. A group of employees entered, chatting animatedly about their weekend. Michael instantly pressed himself against his father, eyes squeezing shut, hands covering his ears. Ellie, to everyone's shock, raised her hand firmly. Quiet, please. The employees froze, bewildered. The CEO herself rarely spoke in elevators, let alone asked for silence. But the authority in her voice silenced them instantly. They rode up the next few floors in uneasy hush, sneaking curious glances at Michael but saying nothing. When they exited, Michael peeked out from behind his father's arm. He looked up at Ellie, gratitude shining in his wide eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. Something cracked open in Ellie's chest. Something she didn't even realize had hardened over the years. That small interaction could have ended there, but it didn't. Over the next few days, Ellie found herself thinking about the boy. She replayed his trembling voice, the way he'd pleaded for silence, and the relief that washed over him when people complied. She thought about Daniel too, the janitor who carried the weight of raising a sensitive child in a world that never stopped talking. Ellie, who had spent most of her life believing success meant never slowing down for anyone, suddenly found herself slowing down for one boy she barely knew. The following week, she saw them again. Daniel mopping floors outside the conference rooms, Michael sitting quietly with a book in the corner, waiting for his father's shift to end. On impulse, Ellie stopped. "What are you reading?" she asked the boy. Michael hesitated before answering, but finally said, "A book about space." "It's quiet up there." Ellie smiled faintly, perhaps the first genuine smile her staff had seen in months. "Yes," she murmured. "I suppose it is." That small conversation became another, then another. Soon Ellie discovered that Michael wasn't just sensitive, he was brilliant. His memory was photographic. His questions about the stars, black holes, and the vastness of the universe were so advanced that even she, with her Ivy League education, struggled to keep up. Behind the janitor's uniform and the boy's quiet struggles, Ellie saw something extraordinary. And for the first time in years, she began to wonder if the true measure of success wasn't written on skyscrapers, but in the unnoticed corners of her own building. What happened next would change not only her life, but the lives of everyone in Sterling Tower.